Has nursing just been a negative experience for you? When you go to nurse your baby, do you suddenly have this emotional just drop where you feel hopeless and you feel dread, guilt, and just this hollowness and sadness? You might have Demer, which is dysphoric milk ejection reflex. You feel this heaviness, this emotional drop only when you're feeding your baby, but at other times you're feeling great. This is something that's not talked about very often, but it is a relatively common thing that happens, and it's physiological. It's something that's happening in your body. So let's talk about Demer. Let's talk about some things it's not, what it actually is, what is happening in your body, and what to do about it. Because sometimes just understanding helps. Knowledge is power. Let's talk about dysphoric milk ejection reflex. First, let's talk about some things it is not. It is not postpartum depression. You notice it only when you're feeding, and at other times you feel great. You're enjoying life. You have motivation. You are excited about things. The ups and downs of daily life is happening for you. But you're having a very sharp down. So this is not postpartum depression. Demer is not a dislike of breastfeeding. It is not impatience with your baby. It is not you being incapable of taking care of your child. It is not irritability because of nipple pain. It is not discomfort in breastfeeding. So what is it? What is Demer? Right before you breastfeed, you have a signal happening in your body, and the dopamine in your body drops down. Milk release, it isn't caused just by the dopamine dropping, it's also caused by oxytocin rising. That signals that, okay, it's time for milk to leave my body. And for most people, we don't really notice that feeling or that dopamine drop. But with people who have dysphoric milk ejection reflex, their dopamine drop is so severe that it hits them and it leaves you reeling, and you're just kind of feeling almost out of your mind a little bit because you're totally okay, and then suddenly you're in a pit of despair. And then you're okay again. And it happens for a few seconds, up to a couple minutes, but some mummies will feel it the whole nursing time. Why is this? Because you have multiple letdowns happen when you're feeding. You don't just have one letdown. That first one tends to be the strongest, but it happens repeatedly while you're nursing. And that hormonal shift is happening over and over again. And for most of us, it's like this. The dopamine drops, the milk comes out, rises back up. Dopamine drops, milk comes out, rises back up. But for people who have Demer, it's like this. Such huge dopamine drops. So it's completely understandable as to how you're feeling. It is a physiological response. It's a physical response that your body is having to something that is happening inside of you chemically and hormonally. There's nothing wrong with you. This tends to be a temporary situation that mummies will find themselves in, and it typically will resolve around 4 months postpartum, but sometimes it doesn't resolve. And it happens every time you breastfeed. So what is Demer? It's a hormonal shift. It's a temporary feeling, and it has 3 stages: mild, moderate, and severe. With mild Demer, it self-corrects within 3 months. It's where your hormones kind of figure it out, and the dopamine doesn't drop so sharply. It learns to kind of dance with the prolactin and with the oxytocin a little bit smoother. With a moderate Demer, you might have it resolve around 9 months. And if you have severe Demer, sometimes it doesn't self-resolve. It stops when you stop breastfeeding. So some mummies will wean because of this. Other mummies will go on a sort of medication for it. And other mummies just know this is a temporary thing that happens just when I'm feeding, and then I'm fine. It is hardest in the first few months because we're feeding so frequently in the first few months. So feeling that emotional drop 12, 14 times a day, it takes a toll on us. And it's completely understandable for it to just feel heavy. It is a hormonal shift. There is nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're incapable or you're not strong enough or you're unhealthy or you're depressed. It's just a physical effect that's happening in your body. And it will go away. If you have been struggling with this, if you have been having just dips in your emotions just when you're feeding and you just feel this despair, it might be Demer. It just might be a physical response to a hormone that's dropping in your body. And it will learn to balance out for most women. Otherwise, you know that this isn't a permanent thing. This is a temporary low right when I'm feeding, and then I'm back. It is very difficult to deal with. I experienced it with my second, and it made our feeding sessions something for me to kind of get through, because I felt it not just for a few seconds, but for the majority of the feed, where it's just like, I almost became despondent for a bit. But I knew what was happening in my body, and that helped me so much to just like know that my milk is medicine. My milk is so nourishing to my baby. And I am not weak. I am a good mommy. I'm caring for my baby the best of my ability. I'm allowing him to bond with me, and I am bonding with him. And this emotional dip is temporary. And in a few minutes, I'm gonna feel good again, and I'm gonna feel like myself again. And that helped me. That helped me a lot to get through that season where those hormones were trying to figure things out, to where it did end up resolving itself. It took a few months, but it did end up resolving itself, and I stopped feeling that dip in my emotions when I'd go to feed my baby. So I hope this helps you. I hope just the knowledge of what's happening in your body is helpful. And if it does help, will you just give this video a like and a subscribe so that I can keep making more videos for mummies like you. Love ya. See ya, pizza.